Hello, my name is William Swetke, and I am going to be talking about the current unemployment rate for the United States, the current rate of economic growth or the GDP of the United States, the current inflation rate in the economy of the United States, and the United States' current account. So, the current unemployment rate for the US is currently at 4%. And the reasons for that are global competition, automation, demographics, and education. And this is due to the United States competitiveness, but also has impacts all around the world. And this isn't historically low or high because the ideal unemployment rate is 5% or lower. So the fact that we are at 4% currently is definitely good because we are below the 5% mark. But in terms of where the United States have been as a whole, it definitely could be, or it has been lower than it currently is. So we're not at a historically low or high point, but we are definitely doing well in terms of our current unemployment rate. So next is the current rate of economic growth, or the GDP. The current rate of economic growth in the US is currently 2.3%. And this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's also not a good thing because you ideally want your economic growth to be around 3% or higher. And so we are slowly closing towards the 3%, but currently we are not at 3%. So we are underneath sort of the marker of where we want to be. And the current economy is experiencing a recovery because we are slowly moving up a little bit, which would create an expansion. However, it is not fast enough that we would consider an expansion, so therefore we are currently in a state of recovery. And it is a healthy rate of growth because we are slowly going back towards the 3% or higher mark, which is where you want to be. But it's definitely, the economy could be moving faster in terms of its economic growth, but for right now, we currently are on a steady pace to go back to the 3%, which is where we want to be. So, the current rate of inflation in the US economy is 3%, and this is definitely way too high because the ideal inflation rate is ideally anything 2% or lower. So we're a full percentage over what the ideal inflation rate is. So this is definitely going to increase prices of everything. It's going to make, which will obviously make things way more expensive without them being in scarce reality. And so the central bank should definitely avoid wage and price controls because this would definitely help decrease the inflation rate because mainly because if they are able to control the prices and avoid specific wages, it would definitely help control the prices of certain goods and resources, and that's huge in terms of controlling inflation. But the problem with this technique is that even though it has limited or produced success in the past, it is currently not being used in the common economy today. So it's one of those things where they could use it, but it's just one of those things where it hasn't been used in a while, so they just choose not to use it. And then the last thing I will talk about is the current account of the US right now. So the current account for the US is negative 310.948 billion dollars. And this means the US is currently experiencing a deficit, which is not good for the economy at all. And this is obviously very bad because this means that we are negative $310.948 billion in debt to other countries. Or it could be partly we share debts to other countries, but it's mainly because we are in debt in some way, and this is not good for the economy at all because if we're losing that much money on a yearly basis, then it's just not helping the economy in any way, shape, or form, and it just will not help the economy grow or expand or anything like that. So, the bottom line for all four of these points is that the current unemployment rate for being at 4%, That is currently fine, and there we could obviously do a little bit better, but in terms of where it's currently at, there's not much we can do, and it's currently at a steady rate. In terms of the rate of economic growth, or the GPD, it is obviously not too bad, but we definitely want to try and reach that 3% threshold, so that way we can like do better than some of the other countries and our economy can grow faster. In terms of the inflation rate, we definitely need to try and find ways to either bring prices down or find a way to make goods not as expensive, because being a whole percent above the threshold line of where we want to be is not the best thing for the economy. And obviously, last but not least, the current account of the US, we need to find some ways to where we're either spending more money to pay off our debts, or we're finding ways to sort of prevent the debts from getting any bigger than they are. Because if we're already in debt by $310.948 billion, then I'm afraid that with how the economy is growing and expanding, it may possibly be even further in debt. So thanks again for listening to my podcast about the current state of the US economy.